Stick around because today we're going to be talking about standing between the living and the dead. Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Josiah Douglas. If this is your first time watching, I do biblical inspiration and motivation here on YouTube 5 days a week. That's the kind of thing that you're into, you go ahead and hit subscribe and we can do this every day together. Today we're going to be talking again out of Numbers 16. Now, if you are looking for some awesome stories in the Bible that you've probably never even heard before, read Numbers chapters 16 and 17 because it is non-stop action, and honestly, it'll probably blow your mind if you've never heard these stories before. So, here's what's been going on. Basically, we talked about yesterday, Korah and a couple other guys, they stepped up and they questioned Moses and Aaron's leadership. The next day, God literally opened up the ground, and Korah and these two other guys and their families fell down into the ground. The ground closed back up and they were gone. They were dead. And then a whole bunch of the other guys that were with Korah and these other guys, they came forward and they had censers and lit them, the kind of censers that they would have inside the tabernacle that only the Levites and priests could use, but they lit their censers with fire and they brought them to the tabernacle. And you know what happened? God consumed them in a huge giant fire out of nowhere, and they all died too. And now here it is, like the very next day, a bunch of other people are coming up and they're saying, Moses, Aaron, you guys killed all these people. That's not okay. We're going to overthrow you because you just killed all of our friends. And so here we are in chapter 16, verse 44. It says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Get away from the midst of the congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell on their faces. And Moses said to Aaron, Take your censer and put fire on it from off the altar, and lay incense on it, and carry it quickly to the congregation, and make atonement for them. For wrath has gone out from the Lord. The plague has begun." The plague. So Aaron took it as Moses said and ran into the midst of the assembly, and behold, the plague had already begun among the people. And he put on the incense and made atonement for the people. And he stood between the dead and the living, and the plague stopped. Okay, so a lot just happened here in just a couple verses. Let me see if I can explain it to you. All these people were complaining and saying, Moses and Aaron, you guys killed all of these friends, all of our buddies. And so that's not okay. That's not cool. So God heard their complaining and said, you know what? I'm getting rid of all of them. I'm getting rid of the entire Israel nation. They're just going to be gone. And so a plague started on the other side of the camp. And the plague was coming towards the tabernacle through the entire camp. And basically, as the plague went through, we don't even know what kind of plague it was, but people were dropping down dead as the plague hit them. And so what Moses said was, you know what? Aaron, you're the priest. Grab some stuff to make atonement for the people so that God's wrath will end, and run out there and stop the plague. Moses grabbed a censer, put some fire in it, holy fire from the tabernacle, put some incense in it, and sprinted as fast as he could towards the plague. As the plague is coming at him and people are dying just left and right, just falling down dead, Aaron is running straight at it, and he's holding out the censer and he's making atonement. He finally gets to where the plague is, and he stops just as the plague is coming to him, and he makes atonement for the people, and the plague stops. And literally, Aaron is standing there holding a censer on fire with incense, making atonement for the people, and he's standing in front of him are all the dead people who have died from this plague, and behind him is everybody who's still alive. Crazy, right? Like, this is one of the most intense stories you've ever heard, and it's only like 4 or 5 verses long. Better than any movie. Listen to this. A couple verses later, it says that 14,700 people died in this plague as this plague was spreading across the Israelite camp. 14,000 people died. And that doesn't include all the people who were swept up in the fire the day before. It doesn't include all the people who were sucked into the ground the day before. Almost 15,000 people died just right there. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Josiah, that's an awesome story, but how does that apply to me? Well, 2 ways. First, the Bible is awesome. Like, dear God, you need to read it because there are tiny stories that are only a few verses long in the Bible that are just absolutely amazing and blow Lord of the Rings out of the water. Second, the same way that Aaron took the censer of fire and went running to make atonement for all the Israelites, to stop the plague and stop people from dying, to save them, you and I need to be doing the same thing. In almost an instant, 15,000 of the Israelites died. And you know what stopped it? It took somebody standing up and running and making atonement for these people and standing between the living and the dead. You and I need to be doing the same thing. Every single day, thousands of people die and they go to hell. And you know why? Because there's not somebody like you and me, like Aaron, to stand up and stand between the living and the dead and say, you know what? That's enough. Enough people have gone to hell. Enough people have gone without knowing about Christ. Being a Christian saves you, and that's great. But every day people die. Every day people are going to hell. And if you can't stand up and tell those people about Christ, stand between the living and dead and say, this plague stops now, it stops with me, and I'm going to save every single person I possibly can, then the plague's just going to go through the whole camp. Because if you don't stand up and you don't do what Jesus told us to do, fulfill the Great Commission and spread his name throughout the world, those people just die. And that's it for them. It's time to stop just knowing what you should do and not doing it. It's time to stop wishing that people would go to heaven but not doing anything about it. It's time for you and it's time for me to stand up between the living and the dead and tell people about Christ. Okay, so I got a little bit intense there at the end, but it's an important message and it needs to be said. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, go ahead and hit the like button. If you didn't like what I had to say, hit the dislike button. Let me know. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you weren't so offended by this video that you want to watch the next one, go ahead and watch this one right here. It's a good video. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe and hit the bell. That way you get notifications when I do these videos every day. Thanks, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.